One guy's seen it, the other guy hasn't. First guy's gonna tell the second guy all about it while they both get drunk.
All right, welcome to a very, very special episode of One Guy's Seen It. I'm leaving out the normal intro today because my buddy Sumner and I here are big fans of anything and everything World War II, and recently Band of Brothers, which I don't know about you, Sum, holds a very special place in my childhood heart, has recently come out in its entirety on Netflix, and we have decided to do a special One Guy's Seen It series on Band of Brothers, which I don't know about you, might be like one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think it's one of my favorites too. It's like in the top 5 for sure. And with all the World War II stuff out there, and I think the only thing that comes close is Saving Private Ryan for me personally. But it's like right at the top of the heap in terms of World War II stuff. And I figured it had been a really long time since I had watched the whole thing all the way through, and I'd figured it'd been about the same for you.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time. It's been years. So I'm really excited to get back into it. Okay, so what's the format? How do we want to do this?
Well, I think we'll split it up 2 episodes at a time for each episode. So we'll watch the first 2 and then come back and talk about it, and then we'll just keep going that way for each additional episodes, or we'll jumble them all together in one big episode. I don't know yet, but we'll see. We'll see where this takes us.
Hell yeah, I'm stoked. So tell me stuff that's cool about like production and who's behind this, and do you know cool stuff? Because I don't really know anything.
I do. I texted you like a month ago. I was in bed and Andy had just gone to sleep, and I had a full beer, and I saw that Band of Brothers was on Netflix, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen this in forever. And there was this trend on TikTok floating around, like it was like around Thanksgiving, and it was all these guys like that started watching Band of Brothers. I don't know what the significance of Thanksgiving is. Like, just people started watching it around that time.
Weird.
Again. Yeah, I don't know what it is. But I guess, I mean, we're doing this on the 13th of December, like recording date, and the 82nd anniversary of when we entered World War II was on the 7th. So I guess that's our significant date kind of relation to World War II.
Yeah, that could explain it.
Yeah, but I just saw it floating around, and I was just laying in bed. I was watching the first 2 episodes and drinking. I was like, I know it goes against the form of the show a little bit because we've both seen it, but I feel like it's been long enough where it's kind of like revisiting, and I've since then gained some historical knowledge, and I've learned more about the real life guys and the production of the whole thing. So I have more to offer. So in a sense, it could be more like a One Guy Seen It, where I can tell you stuff that you might not know. So
yeah, and I'm going to intentionally not Google anything.
Yeah, and that was one thing when I started the rewatch, and I finished it, so I'm rewatching it again now, and that was one thing rewatching. I was trying to keep track of every character in my head, and it was a lot harder than I remembered it being. But rewatching it now,
because there's a ton of characters.
Yeah, there's like the main ones. There's probably like 20 to 30-ish characters overall. Some minor, some major, and probably even more than that. But it's a pretty sprawling epic, and it's pretty expertly done, I'd say. And I love it. It's one of my faves.
Hell yeah. Well, do we want to just jump in, or do you want to do any kind of like any kind of pre-production setup? Should we just get into this bad boy?
Yeah, I think the 2 episodes we're going to cover, or the first 2 for people that obviously know the series, but it's the first 2 episodes is Currahee, and I think it's Day of Days is the second episode. So it's
Day of Days.
So it's the boot camp section of their training, and then the D-Day, which is pretty significant moments in Easy Company history.
Easy Company, baby. I'm excited to get back and hang out with Easy Company.
Yeah, it's the best. All the characters are so good, and it's and Playtone, which is Tom Hanks's production company. He and Spielberg spearheaded the whole thing, and I think they're largely responsible for that resurgence of World War II games that came out in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that checks out, which is probably the whole reason we even give a shit about World War II at all, was because those consoles and those games were like the zeitgeist of gaming when we were kids.
Yeah, and you played the Medal of Honor series, and I played one maybe, but I played the Call of Duty series more. Like I played Finest Hour, and then I played Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, which was my favorite, but I didn't even know until recently that a lot of the voice actors in the show are from Band of Brothers, which is also, I think, another connection to the show that I have. Just like I recognize those voices so much from playing that game over and over again.
That's nuts. Yeah, like I vaguely remember some of that stuff. And that's what's funny too. I'm a couple years older than you. I think the reason that Medal of Honor was a bigger part of my World War II gaming, just because they came out first. Like Medal of Honor Frontline and Rising Sun were just out maybe like a year or two before Finest Hour. Before the first Call of Duty, and so I just started with those. I thought that the Call of Duty games were better games when they came out, but
yeah. Well, and the cool thing about the Medal of Honor series is that Spielberg was directly behind those, because Band of Brothers was getting released and he had just done Saving Private Ryan. He made the Medal of Honor series pretty much, and he wanted to have an accurate representation of World War II.
So Spielberg was involved with Medal of Honor, but the voice actors in Call of Duty Big Red 1 were also from Band of Brothers?
Yeah. And I don't know if they're
insane.
Yeah, I don't know why they were in Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1 specifically, but I guess they were big fans of the series and they just wanted those guys and got most of them. It was insane. Man. Everybody except for Damian Lewis.
Do we basically owe our entire childhoods to Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg?
Kind of, yeah. It kind of changed the face of video gaming up until, like, World War II games, like, own the landscape until, like, 2006, I feel like. And then Modern Warfare came
crazy?
out.
All I really cared about for, like, 5 years of my childhood was World War II, Jurassic Park, and Power Rangers. So Spielberg was like he's like my uncle.
Yeah. And it seems like such a small thing now, but in terms of, because I think you talk to most guys in our generation, like they all seem to be really into World War II. I don't know if that's direct correlation to Spielberg, but it came out, Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, and Medal of Honor, and all the Call of Duties, like that came out directly in our childhood. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's got to be gaming, man. It has to be. Like, it has to be the Medal of Honor and Call of Duty series. They were just such an integral part. It's like all my friends were playing all of them. It's like you go to anybody's house and that's what people were playing. It's just World War II in your face all the time.
Yeah. And I got to give props to Spielberg to have the foresight to be like, because video games were not a huge thing. Like console gaming was not in its infancy at the time. But he had the foresight to be like, this is going to be a way to get kids into history and like into World War II and stuff. And he was able to see it somehow, and it worked. It worked for us anyway.
Yeah, big win. Well, I have never been more stoked to do an episode of One Guy's Seen It, even though this isn't really even One Guy's Seen It. It's just a trip down memory lane.
We do what we want on this podcast.
Yeah. That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready? Let's go do this thing.
I am so ready.
All right, you are listening to One Guy's Seen It. Why, we don't know, but we will be back. Just remember, when you hear that trumpet sound, spoilers for Band of Brothers are on the way. All right, friends, we are back with One Guy's Seen It, our very special series on Band of Brothers. We just knocked out episode 1 and 2, and holy shit, I forgot how much I love this show.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Dude, you know what's funny is, like, I think when I've gone and done rewatches, I usually skip boot camp. I usually skip the first episode.
Yeah.
And, man, first of all, we're getting Ross Geller, the human tube of toothpaste, in a starring role. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny, too, because I even remember when... Like, I remember when I would see this episode, I'd just be perusing through HBO or whatever, and I would see this episode on, and I would jump in and watch it. Even as a younger kid, I was just like, he's just Ross. And I know that Friends, in a way, hurt his career and his ability to get other roles. But it's always funny, like it's his first line. I'm like, what is Ross doing in a military uniform in the 40s? And then a couple lines in, he's got me sold. Like he's a good actor. It doesn't take long for me to get into it, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's I think once you get past that initial thing of it being Ross, I think he does a really great job with it. And every rewatch that I do of the series, I like him more and more in it.
Yeah, he's such a great dick, man. So let's start with the first episode. How do you want to get into this thing?
Yeah, I don't even know. I do think the interesting thing about David Schwimmer is that, like, out of everybody that you see in the show, and like almost everybody kind of went on to do something at some point, but that David Schwimmer was the biggest actor in this show at the time. Like it was like at the height of Friends, and I do have a lot of respect for him that he was like, you know what, I'm gonna go off and do Band of Brothers right in the middle of Friends. I think that was kind of a ballsy move on his part. So I give him props for that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. And honestly, I'm glad you said that, because I forgot how many actors are in this show. Like, I forgot even that are just kind of extras in the background. Like, in these first 2 episodes alone, a few that jumped out at me. What's his face from Prometheus?
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, you got a Fassbender appearance. I don't even know if he had a line.
Barely.
I can't remember if he had a line.
He was the one that, when they finished the march, his canteen was almost empty, and then
yeah.
And then Sobel yells at him.
yeah. So you got Fassbender. There was a I always forget this actor's name. Sean from Shaun of the Dead.
Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg. Thank you. I'm pretty sure Simon Pegg didn't have a line. I just remember him being kind of in the background of a shot. Did he?
No, he was. He was in a couple of scenes. He's kind of obscured, but he's in the scene with David Schwimmer where they're in the field and like Sobel doesn't know what to do, and then there's that scene where Luz, like the funny guy, imitates what's his name? One of the like commanding officers, and Simon Pegg is the guy next to David Schwimmer in that scene. He's got a line or two.
Yeah. When they're doing the prank. Yeah.
And then he hands Winters a court-martial towards the end of the first episode, I think. The court-martial letter.
Got it. Yeah. But just how crazy. I mean, some huge actors that I don't know if they were necessarily getting their start in this. What was this, like 2001? When was this first season?
2000.
Jeez, that's crazy, man.
So yeah, it's right on the edge of the 90s, and I think actually David Schwimmer was one of the biggest, but Ron Livingston also was one of the biggest at the time. Like, he was just coming off of Office Space very recently, which I don't think was
nuts. I didn't even.
Which I don't think was like a big hit either, but he was well known enough at the time.
Right. Did Office Space kind of? I guess it probably became more of like a cult classic later, right?
Yeah, it did. Which was shot in Austin, Texas, I think.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Mike traffic Judge scenes make a lot more sense now.
Yeah, Mike Judge is a local boy. Well, for us.
That's pretty cool. That explains the King of the Hill, University of Texas references all over the place. Love it.
Yeah.
Dude, I gotta say, I love me some heavy film grain. Gotta point it out. Not sure any show does it better.
Yeah, there's some heavy, and I don't even know if it's like a limitation of the time, but I notice it more so than I do movies from the 70s even. Like, it's pretty apparent.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, because I would assume the whole thing was shot on film. I would imagine that it's natural grain from whatever stock they're using.
And it seems like a low-grade film stock. Because I don't know, there's something of the time with TV. I think they shot on a different film stock, but I don't know for sure. So I could be wrong about that.
It just adds to the vibe. It makes it feel like it's the 40s. I love it.
It does. That desaturated Saving Private Ryan quality is very apparent.
Yeah, there's going back to the other actors that I noticed. There's a guy who, again, I don't even remember if he had a line, but it's after they take the guns and the machine gun nest at the end. I know we need to stick with episode 1, but at the end of episode 2, yeah, when they take the nest at the end, there's this guy who Winters is like reporting to right after the battle when they're walking up to the tank. And that actor, I have seen him play like a Russian mobster bad guy in a movie that I saw recently, and I could not put my finger on it. It's like part of me thinks it was Crank. Did you ever see Crank with Jason Statham?
Yeah, a long time ago, yeah.
So there's like, I'm pretty sure it's that movie. There's like a Russian mobster guy who he has to like fight at the end of the movie, and it was that dude. And it's just, anyway, it's just crazy. There's so many little background actors that I've seen in other things, but
yeah.
But sorry, going back to the first episode.
Yeah, and there are more and more as the series goes on. Like, it's insane. Like, Tom Hardy shows up at one point, like very, very young Tom Hardy, and it's crazy.
Ugh, I'm so excited. I already gotta jump in. I gotta jump in on my first favorite quote of the first episode. I don't even think it's close. Early on when Sobel's yelling at his crew for like the third or fourth time or whatever. Rust on the butt plate hinge private bullshit. Or no, what's the full line? Rust on the butt plate hinge spring private bullshit. There goes your weekend duties. So good.
Revoked.
Yeah. Rust on the butt plate hinge spring private bullshit. I mean, that's just a beautiful sentence.
And there's an interesting thing too with so there's a thing with the so they have the M1 rifle. This is a weird, or not even a weird, but this is like a history thing, which I think is interesting. So they had the standard issue M1 rifle, which is the M1 Garand, or Garand, as I think is the correct term. But he's carrying a carbine, like an M4 carbine. I don't know, but
yeah, I think it's the M4A1 carbine, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So that was a thing that was issued from my minor research mainly for tank personnel and like drivers of like Jeeps and stuff.
No, M1A1 carbine. Sorry,
M1A1.
M4 is a modern rifle. Yeah, M1A1. But yeah, okay, sorry, you were saying tank commanders?
Yeah, well, they liked the carbine because it was clip loaded and you could load it at the bottom instead of like having to load a clip at the top. And the thing with the M1 was if you loaded it incorrect, well, it only had 8 shots on top of that. Is more for long range. But when you loaded it in, like you could get, they call it grand thumb. So if you like, so you know, like the M1 rifle, you stick the bullets at the top in the clip, and sometimes the gate would close on your thumb, and just crush your thumb, and a lot of guys would have these big bruises, and that was one of the things in Saving Private Ryan. A lot of those guys had those bruised thumbs, and that was like a minor history thing that would happen to those guys.
Dude, how did I've never noticed. I've seen Saving Private Ryan 100 times. I've never noticed that.
It's such a minor detail. Like you'll notice it in some of their thumbs, like if you're paying attention. But it's like, I mean, if you didn't know that piece of it, it would just seem like an innocuous thing, like you wouldn't notice.
Right. Yeah, man. I over the years, I've always loved the design and the like quirky function of the M1 Garand, just because we've had so much exposure to it and used it in so many video games. But I've heard a lot more recently about how it was just like not a great weapon. That it like jammed really easily. It was and first of all, we have to. Have you heard different?
Well, no, I haven't heard the jamming thing. Well, I think when the clip ejected when you shot your 8 shots, they would have that signature ping sound. So if an enemy was close by, they would know you were out of ammo because that sound is so signature. When you're
talk about the biggest design flaw. I'm sorry, if you're a weapons manufacturer and you're designing a rifle for the entire U.S. military to use during the largest scale invasion in history, how does that get overlooked? Like, how in God's name? Like, at no point during the manufacturing, testing, you know, there had to be a lot of people involved with deciding, yep, this is the weapon that everybody's going to drop in with just an absolute, like literally a fatal design flaw. Like, it just makes no sense. Like, how did no one think about this? And the jamming thing I remember hearing had to do with exactly that when the gate would open, when it would eject, when it would eject the cartridge after the final shot, it would allow dirt and shit in. So like if you were, you know, if you were in the middle of combat and there was dirt and mud flying around or whatever, or even if it had ejected and you were just moving, if I remember correctly, the gate stays open. So it would just let dirt and shit in and jam the... Anyway, moving on. Sorry I interrupted.
No. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is true. Yeah, and I think it was a pain in the ass to clean because it got so dirty, like you were saying. And it's just, it's such a fascinating time because, like, even we were saying, like, the M1 is not the perfect rifle. There have definitely been better rifles that have been made, but for the time, it was such an innovation because bolt action was the norm at the time. To have a semi-automatic rifle like that was a huge leg up from the Kar 98, which was, you know, bolt action 5-shot rifle, which is I think Patton even said it was like one of the greatest innovations for his army because it had such a leg up on German infantrymen or something like that.
Yeah, and I know, and I get that. I just know, just from the little bit of gun history that I do know, that there were other semi-automatic rifle designs and prototypes that were tested too, that were around at the time, that were being considered for military use. Yeah. And I don't understand. Look, even looking at the M1 carbine, right? Like, it just seems like a superior weapon in every way. You've got like I understand that the rounds are probably a much smaller caliber and don't have as much stopping power. Yeah, but
you have more
15
shots.
Rounds. Yeah, it's lighter. It's easier to carry for. I don't know. I don't understand how that became. Anyway, it's not up to me. It's not up to me what we take it. But yeah, that's interesting shit. But sorry, you brought it up. You brought up the M1. Was there a reason?
Oh yeah, it was interesting.
The carbine.
It was interesting that he had one, and it was only for basic training because I think he has an M1 later on. And now we're getting to nerdy details. We'll never finish this if we keep going like this.
Hey, I love this shit.
But I mean, like the carbine was like for like tank drivers and you know, like wheelmen, like the drivers that were like driving the jeeps to and from places. They liked it because it was quick and easy. It was a lower caliber. There's not a lot of recoil to it, and you had more shots. So it was a more versatile gun for guys that were on the move constantly.
Got it.
So yeah, interesting little footnote.
Yeah, and as cool as the Thompson submachine gun is that Garnier gets to run around with, if I remember correctly, wasn't it a typical option for sergeants? I guess Garnier is a sergeant. Yeah,
and he's an NCO, which is like corporal and above. I had to look this up while we were watching this.
Not non-commissioned officer. Yeah.
Yeah. The difference between non-commissioned officers and commissioned officers is it's kind of complicated. I mean, like if you don't know the lingo or the what they mean right offhand.
Yeah, I remember thinking, and it's funny because I never had this thought before. I've always loved the Thompson submachine gun. Like we grew up with it. It's such a cool design. You got the whole, you know, mob, U.S. mob usage of it, kind of making it a legend. And I know that it had to be effective in a lot of situations, but I don't understand why you would want that kind of fire rate on a weapon that has a 20-round magazine. Like, I mean, you're talking, the fire rate is so fast. The magazine is empty in like 3 seconds, and it's like good. And I think it's interesting throughout the second episode, like how insanely accurate Garnier is with it, because there's just no way. Like, there's no way. Like, but it's still cool. It makes him a badass. And like, anyway, like you said, we're getting way too much into the nerdy shit.
Yeah, but I agree. I mean, like Thompson is such a, I would want the M1 over the Thompson for sure in a tactical sense, I think.
Right. Unless you walk into a room and you're outnumbered 5-1, you're gonna want that fire rate.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, it's
anyway,
insane.
Enough hypothetical combat situations for us. We gotta get back into this. I wanted to point out this. So Sobel's character arc is kind of cool in the first episode, and there's a moment during all of his tirades when he gives them all spaghetti and then makes them run, and he's running alongside of them.
Total dick move.
They all start, total dick move, just show of dominance and power, whatever. And they all start singing while he's yelling at them. And there's this moment that you see washed over his face, and I thought it was a really interesting moment because I feel like it's kind of up for interpretation a little bit, that he's realizing that he hasn't crushed their spirits in the way that he wanted to, but then it's like almost for a moment he realizes, oh wait, like I almost lost sight of the fact that them doing this means I'm doing a good job. It's like he has the moment where he's so focused. He's been so focused on just making everyone suffer to make himself look good. And then he's like, oh wait, they actually have some brotherhood here. And then he decides, it's like at first he's concerned, and then he has this shift in his face where he decides, oh yeah, I did that. I gave them the brotherhood to be able to get through this and start singing. I just thought it was interesting. It was the most interesting moment of his performance for me in that first episode.
I think there's an element to his character where he's always outside looking in, like he's the one like training them and creating them and like making them into soldiers, but he doesn't get to take part in the camaraderie. He's outside of all of that and doesn't get to experience that. And I think there's a bit of jealousy in a weird way, and so he kind of takes it out on them in a weird masochistic sense. It's just like it pains him that he's not a part of it like them.
Yeah, and it's a little bit self-inflicted, right? Like he could still do the job that he needs to do and have the type of stern hand and control he needs to have over them while not being so fucking cruel. And it's interesting. It's like it's also like he's taking it out on himself for not. He's a complicated character. I'm sure that a lot of I don't even know what you'd call him. He's not like a drill sergeant in that scenario. He's like he's a captain. He's like I guess he's a captain and commanding officer. He's like the total commander of Easy Company, right? I mean, at the time,
he's a hybrid of both. He's a commander, or he's captain of the platoon, I think. So like in his platoon is Easy, and then there's Dog and Abel and all the other ones. So I think in total, like Easy is made up of like 1,800 or 2,000 men. I don't know for sure. Initially, and then there are replacements along the way, which you can get into more as the series goes on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember how cool all of the interviews are at the beginning of each episode, but I forgot how cool they are, and like I can't wait for the rest of those guys, of the real dudes. And I just, man, like I can't wait. And I got goosebumps during the intro theme music. I get goosebumps every time. Like I'm so excited to watch the rest of this show. Was there anything in episode 1 that you really wanted to? Because that's most of the notes that I had. I love the first episode.
Oh yeah, I got so much. Well, talking about the interview guys, I think it's interesting that the Airborne was a very, very new thing at the time. Like it was brand new, pretty much, because World War I, at the tail end, I think they had flirted with the idea of doing it, but they never quite did it because it was too new and the war was almost over. There was no point in really doing it, and there was not really a major conflict for the U.S. at least up until that point. So the Airborne was like this brand new. They were just trying out the newest branch of the military, and and the Airborne guys were just kind of on the they were pioneers of that type of training and warfare essentially. And I love the thing that the guy says. He's like, most of the reason that the guy signed up is that you got paid $50 more than all the other guys, and they were like, all right, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's that simple. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, so it's just it's crazy too, because hearing them talk about it, you're really, and I think even one guy says that he's like, the guys from this one guy's local town were 4F, which meant that they couldn't serve and they were disqualified from military service for whatever reason, and those guys committed suicide. And then he just kind of looks down and he's like, different time. It's just like different time.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's an understatement. Those guys were just different. Like, they're not really of the same species. They're very different people than we are today. And that's cultural, way you grew up, and, all kinds of factors. So I'm just endlessly fascinated by, those guys. There's not that many walking around anymore, which is really sad, but, just part of the transition, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be bizarre to see we'll be alive for all the Vietnam guys to be gone.
Yeah, hopefully.
Oh, come on.
You never know.
Oh, you mean hopefully like we survive. Got it.
Hopefully we survive.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I can't wait for all those fuckers to die.
Dude, I was like, damn, bro, that's savage.
Yeah, like I'd be like, yeah, I fucking hate Vietnam. I love World War II guys. I fucking hate Vietnam guys. They fucking suck.
I love it when the English language fails us so miserably.
I forgot to put a comma in there somewhere.
Kamish mama.
Comma mama.
Yeah, dude. I don't know about you. I'm so ready to talk about episode 2.
Well, I do have a couple more things to talk about.
Yeah, keep it coming.
Well, I do know a little bit more about Sobel, which is like, there's not a whole lot of insight into his character, but more so like what he did after the war and like who he was as a person. And he had some, he was like a really big family man, and he had a strong, family. And from the way his kids describe him, he was a very loving and caring father. So I think the way he's portrayed in the show is a little overblown for drama's sake, but I don't doubt that all the things that happened in the show did happen. I'm sure they happen in a similar way. But
sure,
he had a pretty sad end. I think when he was around 50, he had committed suicide, and nobody really knows why. I think there was various reasons. And I don't want to speculate about what they were because I can't quite remember, but yeah, he did commit suicide pretty young. And even after the war, the Easy Company guys had reunions every year and would get together. And even though the guys initially didn't like him, I think a lot of them realized he was a big part of why they were successful as a unit after the fact. And so they would always invite him, but he would never return the invite or say he was coming or anything. Never showed up to any of them. So
yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Kind of a sad end, because as much as he is an asshole, I do think he is instrumental in making them what they were, for sure.
Yeah, I need a spin-off series with how it went for him at the new school.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think from what I've heard, he was pretty successful. I think he did some combat stuff in the war and did fine. Like, he was actually okay. From what I'd read.
Good for the tube of toothpaste.
Yeah, good for the tube of toothpaste. Oh, and one thing I did want to talk about Kurahi, which I think is fascinating. So, there's that the famous quote that David Schwimmer has is 3 miles up, 3 miles down, from Kurahi, and
Hi ho silver.
Hi ho silver, which is the most annoying thing you could say. But so they have to do that 6 mile hike in 45 minutes, which means that their mile has to be 7.5 minutes continuously up and down the hill. which breaking that down is insane. A 7.5 minute mile is like, like Olympic athlete territory. That's an insane run when you think about it.
Yeah.
So they were in tip-top physical shape going into war. Like they were, and I watched the documentary where it's just the interviews of the guys, and they're just talking about the war and stuff. It's like an hour long. I think it's on YouTube somewhere. It's really good.
Yeah, I got to see that.
And they're just talking about whenever they would have a beer, like in the scene at the end when they're they're throwing back drinks at to celebrate. They've got their jump wings and their boots, which is a really big deal for the paratroopers. It kind of set them apart from just the average soldier, made them more of a prestige. And the guys were saying is like, when you're in that physical shape and you don't do anything except eat and run constantly, when you have a beer or two, you're fucked up. By the second beer, you're
you're completely trashed.
You're
That's
on a
awesome.
different, you're on a different planet, and which I think is interesting because there's a moment at the end of the episode when they're given those air sickness pills before they go up in the plane, before they're shipped out.
Yeah,
and I've always been fascinated by those because there's something about them that seems a little seedy to me. And I don't know if I'm just reading into the show.
the air sickness pills.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, like you're on the biggest invasion in the history of the entire world up until that point, and you're, storming Europe, and you're giving these guys something to calm their nerves, essentially, because, they've been through training and everything, but there's no telling what's going to happen when they're up in the air. And what if one of the guys goes insane and like get me out of the plane and starts making. So I have a theory. It's not founded by anything. I'll add that into it, but
I'm ready. I'm ready for your theory.
I think that those air pills were like a mild sedative that they gave them, so they weren't freaking out and like
like early Xanax.
Going crazy with anxiety. And another interesting thing about it too is. And I read this somewhere, and it could just be something I read, and it not entirely true. But I don't think that what the contents of those pills has ever been released to the public, so there's no telling what was in them.
Nah, of course not.
So
interesting too that, and I'm sure we'll get to this at some point. It'd be funny if the U.S. military was supplying paratroopers with Xanax while Hitler was supplying his soldiers with methamphetamine. You got a very different vibe battle going on.
Yeah, different battle of attrition, I guess.
Yeah, whoa, chill, guys. Come on.
Yeah, we're just
hanging out. We're just hanging out here in Normandy.
But I think it's supported by like a bunch of the guys that were on the planes ended up passing out while in the air, which I don't think would have been a thing like if they had not taken those pills. So I definitely think there was something in them that would have.
The paratrooper shit fucks with me, man. Because like I remember, there's all these really great like World War II documentary series on Netflix. I think they just dropped a new one like a couple weeks ago. But there's one that I watched recently. It was like World War II in color or whatever, and it was showing this footage from the ground of, and I don't even remember if it was like training exercises or if it was footage from Normandy, but it was like footage you seeing all these troopers fall out of the sky, and you can see, like, if you pause it in the right place, you can see several places like in the background of the shot where there are guys that are just in free fall, like whose chutes have not deployed, and you're like, it's so hard to watch that footage to be like, yep, okay, those guys are gone.
Yeah, that guy
like, just the balls to be the first guys to do that shit. It's just crazy.
And I think too, there's a scene early on when they're doing their initial jumps. And there's a shot of Sobel, which I think if you're looking at it in a certain way paints him in a bad light, but I think is accurate at least, where he's in the plane and he's obviously way more nervous than all the other guys are, because it's like their first initial jump. And I think Sobel is much more aware of the risks that he's taking than all the other guys are. Like he's just completely like ghost face white. Like he's like, I could die right now. Like I could very easily just drop and not die. But
Yeah.
That being said, I think there is a line when the dude is giving them their briefing, and I think he casually just says, he's like, when you fall out of the plane, praying that your canopy opens, you will fall to the ground and gravity will do the rest, kind of thing.
Oh God.
But imagine, so like you have a choice, right? So say you're you and you like, you could be in the airborne or you could be on the naval front and coming in through boat. Like, which would you choose, airborne or boat?
I mean, neither. Both are absolutely terrible.
I mean,
There's
it's a difference.
like.
It's a difference between a shit sandwich and a piss smoothie. Like you got to choose one.
Yeah, and I don't know which is which because, okay, look, if do I have the benefit of hindsight? Like, do I have the benefit of a knowledge of history and what happens for this choice?
No, you don't.
Okay, well, if I didn't have that, I would probably go with the naval invasion because I feel like with an airborne drop, there's so much that can go wrong. I mean, like, they had to know that they were going to be under fire. They had to know that there was a huge chance that they wouldn't land where they needed to land. You're behind enemy lines. There's going to be danger around every corner. Whereas I feel like at least with like a beach landing, it's pretty clear what you're doing and where you're going, and you're with your guys as you land. And I just feel like it would be you would know beforehand that was going to be a little more organized, even though it was just as much of a shit show. But with hindsight, man, it's tough. It's like, okay, yeah. Well, even with hindsight, I would choose a beach where the fewest casualties occurred. Like, what were some of the beaches? I know it was Utah and
Juneau,
Omaha, June.
Omaha.
Yeah, I would pick June. I'd want to land with all the Australians.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd want to land with all those guys. But so Omaha was the one that had the most casualties, especially
right.
Like certain sectors had really awful casualties because they were just triangulated in their positions, and it lasted for hours and hours and hours. But Utah suffered very little casualties in comparison. I think it was only like, I want to say 200 casualties, maybe something like that. And I think in large part it is what Easy Company did at Breakcourt Manor, which is at the end of episode 2. Their assault on those guns was a large part of the success of Utah as opposed to Omaha.
Yeah, and Utah was strange, like geographically, right? Wasn't it? It was mostly like a big cliffs. Like,
yes,
I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly. It was like cliffs.
I think Omaha was too. Certain sections of Omaha were big cliffs, also.
Yeah. Either way, wouldn't want to be on any of those beaches. Period. Wouldn't want to be in anywhere near Normandy during that time.
See, I think I would choose.
Especially, my God, can we have a moment of silence for all of the horses and cattle that die needlessly in war?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Poor horses.
I'm just saying, man. I get it. It happens. Especially, God, man. Any like movie or documentary you've ever seen about World War I, it's basically just nothing but footage of dead horses, and it just kills me, man. I love horses.
Yeah,
sucks.
I do too. You ever see the movie War Horse?
I have seen the movie War Horse. Great movie film.
Great. I think it's directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, dude. I think that was a seen it once, seen it enough kind of movie for me.
Yeah, it's very sad. I don't do well with animals in pain or getting hurt. Like dead dogs in movies, I'm pretty much out. I don't do well with them.
Yeah, not okay. But is that a good segue into episode 2? Are you ready? Or you still got some tasty stuff?
I think I have a couple things, but I won't get too deep into it because we got more stuff to talk about. But I did want to touch on this minor thing. It's just one history thing I wanted to talk about. So they're
Okay.
showing a movie at the beginning, which is right before D-Day, and they're showing this movie called His Girl Friday. It's a movie came out in
Yeah.
1940-ish with Cary Grant, and they're having this in the scene in the movie that they're watching. They're having this talk, and this woman is like, "Oh, what would you do your part for the cause?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm 4F. I couldn't do my part." And the interesting thing about Cary Grant is he did this movie called Philadelphia Story in, I think, the same year that movie came out, and he did it and got paid an exorbitant amount of money because he was a big star at the time, and he donated his entire salary, which I think was $100,000, which is completely unheard of at the time, and he donated that all to the British military in their war effort after
Whoa.
Dunkirk, I think. And so he's an interesting guy, Cary Grant.
Yeah, holy shit. That's some crazy history trivia there for you.
Yeah, just a little tiny thing, but I like that they threw in His Girl Friday because Cary Grant was very supportive of the British military, I suppose. And then
Fucking awesome.
Oh gosh. Oh, the leg bag that they all wear is another weird piece of trivia. So, I think at a certain point they're getting ready for the D-Day invasion, and they've got, I think, 100 pounds of supplies on them, and I think one of the guys, Toy, makes a comment about it. He's like, "I've got to carry all this shit, and I got my M1 and everything. Like, this is an insane amount of stuff to be carrying around." But the thing with the leg bag, and I think they mentioned it in the interviews, is like, for most guys, the initial shock of getting off the plane, when you get like that, when the chute opens, it snaps your body so quickly that the leg bag for most guys just snapped right off and just fell to the earth. So
God, that sucks.
all that supplies is just scattered all over Normandy for no reason. It's just the leg bag was such a bad idea that the military came up with last minute for these guys. So they just had everything that they needed, but it ended up fucking them over pretty badly.
Man, that sucks. Like, you would imagine that it's just the type of thing that it blows your mind when you hear that it was overlooked. It's like how the troopers' supplies being well supplied and having everything they need should be like one of the top priorities. Like, how is it a last minute, there had to be and how did they not test it enough to know that would happen?
I think it was like, if we could get like half of the guys with their leg bags, I think it would do good. I think that was probably their thought process a little bit.
That's
like,
fucking bullshit. That's like the
Yeah.
Stalingrad bullshit. Well, as long as half the soldiers have a magazine of ammunition and the other half have empty rifles, everything will be fine. Like, what? No.
Yeah, Enemy at the Gates is also a really good World War II movie.
Yes, it is. But okay, we got to move on to episode 2 because there's something.
Two more
Okay,
things.
Well,
Two more
okay, you
things
got
and
more.
I'm done.
Okay.
And then I'm done. So then we get introduced at the end of the episode to Buck Compton, who is the new guy.
Good old
essentially.
Bucky.
Old Bucky. But he's the guy he's like the new guy, and Winters is giving him shit for shooting craps with the guys. You remember that scene where in their Jeep and he's like, "Oh, I'm just playing crap. You've got 2 years with these guys. I came here like yesterday. Like, give me a break."
Yeah.
And he makes this quote. He's like, what if you had won? Like, don't put yourself in a position to take from these men, is basically his message to him. But that fraternization thing is still a thing with officers and, enlisted people. Because Andy still has to abide by that because she's in the military as well. So even with her, like, lower ranking people, like, it's like in bad taste to, like, go out and, like, have drinks with them. Like, it can seen as fraternization and
Right, because you can lose respect. You can, and again, I guess the point of that, right, is if you're ever in a combat situation, you want to remove any and all barriers from a soldier not listening to their superior officer, and anything that can happen during the course of fraternization can lead to a soldier it's like you don't want a soldier to be thinking about their commanding officer as a person or as someone that they can disobey. They need to be thinking of them as a fucking boss, like as a vehicle of war that they need to be listening to. It's interesting shit.
Yeah, exactly. And then Nixon is an interesting character. Ron Livingston's character, which I love. It's the alcoholic.
Yeah, he's cool. He's got this whole vibe of I know more than all of you about him the whole time, you know?
Which is interesting because the real life guy was like a Yale graduate. Like he was a very smart dude. And he was one of those.
Didn't everybody go to Yale in 1940?
Yeah, it was only $40 to get into Yale at the time.
Yeah. It was like the 13th grade.
Yeah. But he was he was one of those guys, and I think he just enlisted. I don't think he went through any other route. He just decided to enlist, and and then his drink of choice, Fat 69, the whiskey that he drinks, it comes up quite often as the series goes on. It's like the only thing he'll drink, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah, that reminds me of all the interviews at the beginning with the guys, the one that stuck out to me the most, and I've heard this before, but it's just hard to wrap your mind around that, you know, obviously the U.S. was attacked, which made this war a little different, easier to justify wanting to sign up, wanting to enlist, but just that line that you know, this guy knew people in town that had killed themselves when they couldn't sign up for whatever reason. And it's like, that's just, I can't imagine that kind of. Can you imagine what it was like to be an American at that time? Like, we talk about this all the time about how, you know, the spread of news and the dissemination of information was so different at that time, and you really, no matter where you lived in the country, you were kind of like a product of your surrounding, right? Like a product of the geographical area that you grow up in. Like if everybody in your neighborhood is a Catholic, you're gonna be a Catholic because it's all you know. Like you haven't, unless you're, you know, traveling the country, or everybody in your neighborhood like leans one way politically, you're gonna lean that way. And I just can't imagine. I feel like opinions that people had about whatever was going on had to have been so strong, because it's like the whole country is all these little echo chambers, right? Yeah. Of people feeling so strongly about what's going on. And it's just crazy to think about how some of the conversations and the attitudes of guys in small towns must have been, that people that found out they couldn't go felt like they were going to be so left out and let their country and their people around them down so badly that they felt that there was just no reason to even be alive. Like that is so hard to wrap one's mind around. It's crazy shit.
Yeah, I think that sense of duty and honor was a much bigger thing. You know, which is like almost 80 years ago now. And yeah, it's just, it's like the guy said, it is totally different mindset and landscape, and it just, you know, people don't really think that way anymore. And it's, I don't know if it's for the better or worse. I mean, I don't think going off to fight because you think it's your duty blindly is a good thing, but, you know, in the sense of what they were doing was very rightly just, and they knew what they were doing was right, and they had that, assurance, whereas the guys in Vietnam didn't have that assurance. They didn't really know if what they were doing was the right thing to do. And I think the cause of why they were going to war was really important, and it gave them a lot of confidence in themselves and the country, and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, craziness. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Episode 2, finally.
Yes, episode 2. Okay, so I got to start this one. So there's something that's always stuck with me about this episode, as I have seen several times now, and it's during the initial drop, when all the planes are flying overhead and everybody's jumping out. There's a scene where this pilot's co-pilot gets hit by a bullet from the ground, and his head like explodes right next to the guy, right? And the pilot's reaction has always stuck with me, because I remember
exactly.
Dude, I remember being younger and thinking like, Oh, well, yeah, how else would you respond? But now it just sounds like weird and fake. He's like, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's like, oh no. It's like his reaction seems very G-rated and just, oh geez, well that's not good. It just felt like he was a Fargo character responding to this horrible thing happening right next to him.
Yeah,
And
I've
it's
always
like,
felt that way.
Anyway.
I've always felt that way about that moment because it's so insanely violent and so gruesome. And then he's just like, oh no. Oh God! No!
And it's like, I get it. Like, I guess what else would you say? But I also feel like you wouldn't even react. You know, I feel like if that happened,
Oh, sorry.
I feel like I would just yell. I would just be like, or like holy shit or something. It's just that would never be. And I know, it's the 40s, like you said, different time, different place. Maybe that is the reaction that someone would have. Oh, golly gee willikers, like that's bizarre. Whatever. Like I don't know, but it's always stuck with me. Anyway, I just had to point that out.
Yeah, I just think it's that guy's delivery is, and
maybe it's his delivery.
It's hard to really fault the guy. I mean, like I don't know. I mean, like I think in terms of pure shock, you would probably say some weird stuff that you would, in a way that you wouldn't expect. So it's hard to really say where you would. I'm sure I would say something stupid that I'd be like, why did I say that? Like,
yeah, but it stuck out to you too, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
it did.
Anyway.
Yeah, I noticed. That's always been a moment because it's such a like gruesome, horrible death and it's so shocking. It's like that scene on the beach with Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan when he's talking to the radio guy, and he's Ganef, and he like looks over to the guy, and then there's one point where he looks over and the guy's whole face is just caved in. It's just a giant hole where his face used to be.
That lives in my head rent free.
But yeah, Tom Hanks' reaction is just nothing. He's just so like he just can't think about that right now, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for whatever reason that seems like a more realistic reaction to me.
And it gives weight to that gruesome image. You're like, Jesus Christ, that's so horrific looking.
I think you make an excellent point. I think it's the fact that like that's a more reasonable reaction when something is so gruesome there literally just aren't words. Like that's a way to sell that scene well. There aren't words, and I feel like that was the same situation in this pilot's cockpit, but instead of using no words, he uses just lame ones.
Yeah.
Like, though there are words for this. Oh no.
Yeah, I think if they just like cut to a reaction shot of his face, it would have been much more impactful. I agree with you there.
Yeah, anyway, it's such a small thing to latch onto, but it's always stuck with me. It's like that. Well, and first of all, I think they should rename this episode to Dick and Buck Take Carentan. I think that would be a better title.
Yeah.
Because they're just such a dynamic duo. But I wanted to ask you this. So I've always thought this about like just Normandy, just the Normandy drop in general. It's so hectic and crazy, and I've always wondered how many guys probably just ended up in some random fucking place in Normandy and like never found the rest of their company or never even found another soldier and just, had to start a new life in Normandy. Like, I really wonder if that ever happened to anybody. Like, you didn't find anybody. You're absolutely terrified. You maybe take somebody's clothes or something and just try to blend in, depending on how German you look. I don't. There had to be at least one person that just like started a new life in Normandy and just got lost.
Yeah, I'm sure. I feel like it would be pretty easy. Like if you got separated enough, you could take off everything you have and like try to get civilian clothes. But
Anyway,
it's interesting you say that because the third episode, they focus on a character named Blythe. Who says something similar to that. He's like, I dropped and I couldn't find anybody, and I was just in a hole, and I just, I didn't try to find anyone. And then Spears' character, which ends up being a much bigger part of the show, was one of my favorite characters in the show. He just looks at him, he's like, you know why you did that? And he's like, no, sir, I don't. And he's like, because you think you're still gonna live. You think you're gonna make it out of this. It's like, just accept the fact that you're already dead. You'll have a lot easier time making it through. Is like, Jesus Christ. Like, great monologue.
That's so good. But It is, but Sumner, how could you dip into episode 3 dialogue?
I know.
We just got started on episode 2. What are you doing?
I just love
there's a pedigree here.
I know, and we'll talk about that when that episode comes up, but I just love Spears' character so much, and he's not really in the show yet. You get a glimpse of him in this episode, but he's so awesome in like a completely psychopathic way. He's just he's so cool.
Yeah, good old Lieutenant Spears committing war crimes.
Oh,
Stone cold cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah, that's another interesting
It's funny
history
too.
thing I wanted to
I like
talk to you about.
Yeah, I'm excited because I know it's strange if you're not like I remember rewatching this with you when we lived together and realizing that I didn't even really notice Spears's whole thing in that episode. Like if you're not really paying attention or you can't pick up on like when you're a kid, you can't really pick up on like subtleties or innuendo or things that are happening off camera. Yeah, and there's so many to keep track of. It's like I remembered not even realizing what Spears had done or who he was, and it was this episode just because I was so focused. It was much easier to keep track of everybody and what they were doing. But yeah, he's awesome in a horrible war crimey kind of way.
Yeah, he's a fascinating dude, and then his real life story is really really interesting too.
Oh yeah, I'd be interested to learn more about him.
Yeah. I'll sprinkle that in as we get further into it. Yeah, and I think too with that drop scene when they're getting out of the planes, like, and I heard a historian on YouTube talk about this too. He was talking about the Saving Private Ryan landing. He's like, that's a great depiction of the brutality of war, but there's something about this scene in Band of Brothers that really gives you the sense of scale of the invasion, like how big it was, especially when you see all of them drop out of the plane and there's just thousands and thousands of parachutes all over the sky. You're like, well, you get a real sense of scale of the level of the invasion. It's and I mean, and this is one of those things too. It's definitely limited by the CGI technology that they had at the time. Like, it's not the best CGI ever, but it's good enough to where it doesn't bother me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed.
And
agreed. And it's crazy to see something, even if it's depicted with CGI that's not incredibly impressive today. Like, you have a moment when you're watching it where you realize, like, you're witnessing something that only the people that were there at the time witnessed, and you're witnessing something that the world had never seen before. Like, nobody in the world had ever seen that many paratroopers in one place at one time. Like, it must have been a fucking sight to behold.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Just for, I don't know, like being a German soldier at the time, witnessing that, I can't imagine the fear that must have come over you when you just saw thousands of paratroopers landing all around you. Just completely
the fear,
surrounded.
or even people that lived there, right? Like farmers or townspeople or whatever. Like you saw that, you probably didn't even understand what you were looking at. But as soon as you realize what's going on, you realize, oh shit, like this is about to get really ugly for me and everyone that I know.
Yeah.
Like, madness.
Yeah, and all the farmers too, I think. And this is an interesting thing that I heard a Vietnam vet talk about on YouTube, where he volunteered for the war in Vietnam, and this is like something that got echoed by a lot of guys that ended up volunteering for the Vietnam War, is they were transfixed by those newsreels of seeing those guys, paratroop into France and then getting to those French towns and are just given like parades pretty much when they, are seen as liberators. And a lot of those Vietnam guys that ended up volunteering that's what they thought that they were doing. They were coming in as liberators to free these people from this, dictator-like rule. But when they got there, they realized, it's much more complicated than that. It's not, as cut and dry as, good versus evil. It's very, region specific, and you don't understand what you're doing here. And yeah, just the
Yeah,
confusion.
interesting.
It's like, this is my war, and it's not turning out the way it did for my dad's war. You know, it's like that kind of generational thing is really fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm sure every generation of soldier feels that, because
Yeah.
the more the more the more technologically advanced we get as a as worldwide society or whatever, like the more obvious the blurred lines of war get, the harder it is to justify previous wars. I feel like it's gonna happen with every generation of soldier.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Iraq War veterans feel that way. Like, you know, in retrospect, you look back and it's like, I thought we were fighting evil. It turned out to be more complicated than that. There was evil, but not all the people there were, you know, like cut and dry. You know what I mean? Like, it's more, war is very complicated.
There's always evil and good on both sides.
And that's an interesting thing about war movies too, is like, they're different from action movies. And I've heard people say they don't like war movies very much. And it always boggles my mind, because I think war movies are so interesting, because it's not action and like gore, like watching like a slasher movie or something like that. It's very philosophical in a very strange way. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so much about like blood and guts and action. It's really more about, as you get older anyway, I think maybe when you're younger you watch it for that, but it's more about being in that situation, imagining yourself in those shoes and how awful and terrible everything is, and just having to deal with the situation. How do you mentally wrap yourself around that situation? And I think,
Well, yeah, and maybe that's why these people that say that they don't like war movies but they'll watch action movies, it's because of all of those things. It's like war movies are, especially for people that are sensitive to it, it's like it's really uncomfortable to put yourself through those psychological conundrums, and because every great war movie is going to try to convey the realities of war, right, which are very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And action movies are very cut and dry, good guy, bad guy. I think every great war movie proves that war is not that, and war is humanity, and it's ugly and dirty and gray and beautiful in some ways, and yeah,
and it's it makes you grapple with those questions, and it's just like, this is why I think it's different to watch it. And I think you can get enjoyment out of watching violent stuff, but I think if you lose the reality of violence at the same time, it also loses meaning, and like you get desensitized to it in a bad way. Which is why I like war movies. It's like a palate cleanser. It's like, this is reality. You got to come to terms with what we are as a species. Like, it's been a thing through our entire history as a civilization. So you got to come to terms with it in some way.
Yeah, always fought over the same stupid shit. I'm excited to talk about, like, because to be honest with you, I've seen the whole series several times now, and I think that as many great battles that get depicted throughout this show, historic battles, I think that everything from like the way it was shot to obviously it's aided by the fact that it actually happened this way, but this might be my favorite sequence in the whole series, in this second episode when they take this gun nest. Like, and there's things that I didn't notice several times before. Like, I noticed John Hall's character arc from Able Company for the first time. I've seen this show so many times. I caught his entire arc for the first time. Like, him being the first guy that Winters stumbles across, and him sticking with Winters as Winters kind of reassembles Able Company, walking around near San Mariglis, and they get back to headquarters or whatever, and he wants to stick with Winters and fight. I'd fight with him. It's like, right before they're about to go make this big assault, he shows up and he's been with them from the drop, and they're like, we got to let you go. It's sad because he was building a new band of brothers, and now he's got to deal with. But then I I don't understand if I missed this, like why he ended up showing up with them on their assault anyway. Was there like a little scene where he's like, "Hey, I'm coming along anyway"?
I don't remember one. I think he just ended up tagging along and just showed up.
Yeah, because they were like, nah, because Winters like dismisses him. He's like, you need to go back with Able Company now that we're back here.
Wait, there was a scene where they needed TNT for the things, and he ended up having some. But yeah, he ended up being there
maybe
anyway.
that's what it is. Yeah. I can't remember why he ended up on the assault when he shouldn't have been, and then ends up getting his face blown off, running into the nest with the. I don't know if it was like a grenade that landed next to him. It happens really quickly, but
I think it was like a tripwire or something.
Yeah. It's just interesting that I'd seen it so many times and I never caught his full arc. There's just so many guys, there's so many characters. It's hard to keep up with everybody. He was like Cowboy, right? He was the guy that was arguing back and forth with Garnier, and he finally, or Gonorrhea, however you want to refer to him.
That's one of my favorite lines of the whole episode too, where he's like,
it sucks that he earns his respect and then he just dies. It fucking blows.
Yeah, where he's like, what's his problem? Gonorrhea. And he's like, really? He's like, no, it's his name. He's like, he doesn't have gonorrhea.
He got a shitty name.
Nah, mind your fucking business, cowboy.
And then he finally, because that's how he earns Garnier's respect, right? They're sitting there during the assault, and he says some shit, and he's like, get your shit together, cowboy, because Hall can't hit. The Germans are like running out of the machine gun nest, or out of the gun nest, and Garnier and Hall are like shooting them all down, and Hall can't hit the broadside of a barn with his Grand. And he's like, give me that. And so anyway, Garnier shoots them all with his Thompson, and then like a couple minutes later, they're sitting, and he says some shit to Hall. Garnier does. He's like, hey, you fucking suck or whatever. And then Hall's like, oh, shut up, you piece of shit, Guinea, or something. He's like, hey, and then Garnier's like, hey, I think I like this guy now. But then that's like right before he dies. I was like, God damn it.
Yeah. It was just a bad timing.
Yeah, dude, first of all, I need a nickel for every time someone, I'm going to pay close attention and keep a tally of every time someone yells, Jesus Christ, in this show, because I think I caught 10 in that episode alone.
Yeah.
There's so much crazy shit going on in that assault. I didn't know. First of all, we got to talk about Toy, the Jewish guy who gets, again, something I somehow didn't really catch the previous however many times I've watched this, gets hit by 2 grenades at point blank range, one after the other, and sustains no injuries. And it was so specific that I couldn't help but wonder if that really happened. Do you know anything about that guy, Toy, surviving both of those grenades?
Yeah, he did.
Dude, what? Tell me stuff. That shit really happened.
Yeah, it did. And it was, just like luck of the draw kind of thing. And he had, oh God, I'm trying to remember all the things I can, but he had, his 2 random grenade throws, and he just somehow had missed them, and they had gone off right next to him, and he had sidestepped it. And it just complete luck. I have no idea how that happened.
It's fucking crazy. I don't know how you have your hearing. I mean, let alone being around that kind of rifle fire all the time, but having 2 grenades detonate right next to you, one after the other.
That's the thing,
he probably couldn't hear shit for weeks.
That's the thing too. I think watching action movies, you lose a sense of how loud guns are. Especially if you've never been around guns, you don't know how loud guns can be when you've never been around them. But guns are so fucking loud, especially when they're going off right next to your head. It's literally like there should be blood coming out of your ear. It's so loud. And when it's going continuously for hours and hours, there's no way you could hear anything. The fact that all those guys...
We're talking about high-powered rifles, very large rounds, very loud guns firing.
Yeah, it's impossible to hear anything. The fact that anything got done is mind-boggling. And that the guys didn't come home and have to get hearing aids, is insane. Because if a grenade goes off 5 feet away from you, I don't know how you're not deaf. It's insane to me.
No. Yeah, let alone 2.
Yeah, insane. And then Popeye gets shot in the ass. which is
right in the ass. I thought he liked it in the ass.
I thought you liked it in the ass.
He didn't mean to get fucked up. He didn't mean to fuck up his ass.
Yeah, and I think in that Band of Brothers documentary, Winters talks about Popeye. He was like, that was like one of the most moving things he'd ever heard in combat. It wasn't that he was, in pain so much. It was the fact that he got shot was what he was apologizing for, and he was just like talking about it in retrospect. It like moved him to tears. He was just like, can you imagine being shot and apologizing to your commanding officer? He's very moved by it as an older man. So that was real.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, because it's like you just got there. It's that same mentality we were talking about before. Like the last thing you want to do is let all these guys down that you just went through boot camp with, and you just got there. And yeah, man. Whereas if it was me, I'd be so fucking stoked to get shot in the ass right at the beginning of the war.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'm fucking out of here, guys. I'll see you later.
Peace.
I've had enough of war. So I did look up the numbers just for this this battle sequence. I was curious what the numbers were that they were fighting against at Breakcourt Manor, which is the name of the battle. And so the number of Germans in the area was 60. So they had 60 guys at all these guns that they were going up against. And then they went in with 23 paratroopers. So literally a third of their forces that they were fighting against.
Damn, but they had the element of surprise.
And so I think at the end that 20 Germans had gotten killed and 12 got captured. And then only 4 paratroopers were killed and 2 were wounded during the whole assault, which is insanely
yeah, that's just
effective.
Fucking masterful. And just consider, and I think the reason this has become such a legendary, obviously the whole bit at the end with it, that it sort of became a staple, or how did they describe it? It became a
they teach it at West Point still, his whole
battle
strategy.
It became like a fucking top of the line, this is how you do it type of thing. And what's so interesting to me is you just got to think about all the things that had to go right to make that as successful as it was. And I think they convey that really well with Donnie Wahlberg's character. I can't remember his name.
Lipton.
What's his name in the show? Lipton. Yeah. So, and first of all, Lipton, like fucking climbing up into a tree. It's like that is the absolute last place I would want to be. Like, why would you want to be up in a tree where as soon as your position is revealed, like you have no cover, I mean, I get it, the high ground, like,
yeah,
fucking good on you, but
wild hair.
Totally
he was
exposed
like, I got an idea.
As soon as they see the show. Yeah, I got an idea. But anyway, he gets down from the fucking tree and he's late getting around to every single fucking gun, right? Like he shows up with the dynamite after they've already blown up each one with a hand grenade. Yeah. And it's just funny that like it goes to show how well Winters coordinated that whole thing and how good of a job that everybody did, because you're talking about like the plan was to blow up these guns with this dynamite. That was like the most important part of the plan. And when the guy with the dynamite didn't show up in time, you fucking figure it out. Like shove a grenade down there, find a way to get the job done. And it's just like, yeah, it's a fucking incredible sequence and so well shot. Like I love all the like fast frame rate shit where it's following Winters through the trenches, and it's really cool.
Yeah, and the thing too where the German guys are so confused they ended up shooting at each other at some point.
Yeah, awesome. It makes you wonder if it sort of set like a bad precedent for a lot of those guys that were. Oh, wait. Okay. Well, yeah. Let me finish this thought. So, it makes me wonder if, because really this was like their first engagement of the war, right? And like their first real engagement of the war, and it went so well. There's a part of me that wonders like if this kind of put the wrong idea in their head of how well the rest of it was gonna go, because I mean it was just like perfectly executed. Yeah, false sense of confidence. It had to be like, oh yeah, we fucking got this. Like this is day one. Like I just wonder how quickly that disappeared. But so okay, this is before I forget this, because this really stood out to me. I hadn't noticed this before. There's this crazy part of the assault where this dude crawls up next to Donnie Wahlberg. They're like laying there in the grass during the fight, and he's like, "Hey Sarge, I'm looking for battalion headquarters," and Donnie Wahlberg's like, "What the like what? What do you do?" And then he gets hit in the head, like he gets shot in the head and dies immediately, right?
Yeah.
And my first thought is like, okay, what, like I get the like the point that shot was trying to make, but it's like, what are the odds that this guy like would just stumble upon this battle happening and get so involved that he like gets up in the grass in the middle of the fight next to this dude and like, hey, where's headquarters? Like he just thought this was just like you stumbled into a secret fucking operation. Like where did that guy come from? Did that stand out to you at all? I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, it seemed like one of those, like wars, unpredictable kind of moments. Like you never know what to expect, kind of thing. But if you watch enough war movies, it's very anticipated. Like you could see that coming from a mile away almost.
Yeah, it's on par. It makes me. Those are the types of things I'm like, okay, there's no fucking way that really happened. Like if you're that guy. And you see that shit going on. Well, then again, who knows? If he'd been lost since the drop and was just desperate to get where he was supposed to be, I guess I see it.
And I think the position of it too is kind of weird. Like they're both lying in the grass, like, and where he got shot from, like all the other guys should have been in like the line of fire also, unless it was like a stray bullet, maybe. Like it's very strange little moment. But when you're in like the heat of battle, like it makes perfect sense almost. Like in the heat of the action of the scene.
Yeah. Anyway, but okay. I feel like I've been ranting mostly. So tell me your thoughts on this epic fucking scene.
Yeah, it's
or sequence.
I think it's pretty perfectly done. I think there are a lot of like quick cutting like shaky cam kind of things, which I'm not always a big fan of. Like I wish there was more of like a scale of the battle, like you could see what was going on more clearly, but I also think that was intentional. Like you have to get that jittery, like everything is chaos kind of thing going.
To make you feel like you're there.
Yeah, so I don't really have a problem with that in like overall. And I think it's executed pretty well overall, and it's a great episode.
They had the element of surprise. That reminds me, I've been talking to you about this game, Baldur's Gate, all day. It's the element of surprise, man. You can get, it's so not to get sidetracked here, but it's what's so cool about this game is like there are all these little things you can do to try to get like an advantage in a fight, especially when you're outnumbered. And there are two of the biggest like attack multipliers are being hidden, so that like when you attack, you surprise the enemy, and like being essentially like being in stealth mode or whatever. Yeah, it's basically the same thing, but it like literally doubles your attack output when you're hidden. So like, but there are kind of ways to cheese it. Like everybody says you want to have what's called a rogue in your party, which is like they're obviously different classes of characters, but a rogue is somebody who's typically like good at lock picking and good at sneaking around and like pickpocketing and being stealthy and whatever. And so if you have a guy like that in your party that has a bow that's good with bows, it's basically like a cheat code for every fight, because you can like keep him outside of the range of the battle, because it's turn-based combat, right? You can like keep him on the edge of the fight and have him sneak in and do like a ranged surprise attack, and then before his turn is over, move him outside of the range of the battle. So it just becomes this like rinse and repeat of like sneak the hidden archer in, sneak him out, sneak the hidden archer in, sneak him out, and you can just do like a shit ton of damage that way.
Just like flank and reset.
Flank and reset. That's pretty much. And I think this is one of the reasons I'm bringing this up now, even though it's a huge sidetrack. And one of the reasons I think you'll enjoy this game so much is that it's very like war strategy, over the top war strategy, like the way you plan each encounter. Like you just saying you kind of wished you could see an overall picture of what was going on in the battle. Like this game makes it so that pretty much every encounter you have to think about strategically like you would in war. It's almost like you're moving pieces around and trying to flank and trying to get the element of surprise. And anyway, I just think you would love the game. Shout out to anybody out there playing Baldur's Gate 3. Awesome.
I think it
game.
just won Game of the Year.
Wait, it did? No fucking way.
So.
From who?
Yeah. At E3, I think.
No way. That's awesome. It deserves
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty unanimous decision, but yeah, wanted to throw that out
Fucking
there.
A. I gotta look that up. I didn't realize E3 was still a thing. It's basically just a
I
news
didn't
article
either.
at this point, right?
Yeah, I think I'd seen it on TikTok or something.
Yeah, we need to give a eulogy to E3 and G4 TV.
Oh, I love G4 TV. One of my favorites.
I know. You know, we should start a podcast where we just rewatch episodes of G4 TV and talk about them posthumously.
Dude, I totally would too, because that's like
I know you
my
would.
my whole childhood. Like most nostalgia I feel is watching. There's a channel I follow too that uploads all old episodes of like X-Play and Attack of the Show and Cheat and all those shows, and I watch them all the time.
That's fucking sweet. Anyway,
Like
I'm
coming
sorry.
home
I
from-
did not mean to get sidetracked.
No, it's okay. Yeah, coming home from elementary school and watching G4 is the best. Yeah, but anyway, this show.
Yeah, so Dick and Buck take Carentan.
Yeah.
Are they in Carentan? I don't even remember if that's where they're at. Where
They're
the
in,
headquarters is.
Carentan is where they're going next.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Which I
and
think
then
is the name of the next
Dick
episode.
finds a map that shows. Oh, nice. Okay, that's probably what I was seeing. But I guess this episode ends with Dick finding a map that shows where every German gun is all over Normandy. Cheat code.
Yeah.
Yay! The war is over.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He found all those papers. It's gonna do some good up at headquarters. Oh, and then he has that
paper's gonna
moment
do
of
some good.
that contrition with Garnier in the truck. He like takes a swig of
Yeah, big moment.
alcohol. And
Yeah, because fuck Garnier. I hated Garnier in this episode more than I've hated him in the past. Like,
oh
he's
yeah,
just a
I mean,
tool.
he gets better. His brother just died. You know, he's going through some stuff.
I know. Brothers in arms and all that.
Yeah.
Band of brothers and all that.
Oh, and then his, I'm not a Quaker line is good.
I'm not a Quaker. Yeah, probably what do they think he is instead? Like not a Mormon, but a
Mennonite.
Mennonite. Yeah.
Which he actually was. He was a Mennonite.
No way.
Yeah, it's true.
Nah, he's a Quaker.
He's a Quaker. Yeah. Which I've been to Philadelphia and I've seen the Amish and the Mennonites. They're pretty closely related, the Amish and the Mennonites.
Well, that explains a lot. I gotta say, I thought of you. I was thinking of you the whole episode, but I thought of you when they were eating the spagooter, and
That's good.
the spaghetti, and the guy reaches over to Garnier. It tries to take his spaghetti, and he's like, "Hey, I'm eating here." It's just
I'm
like
eating
such
here.
a 1940s, it's like fucking. Hey,
He's
wait,
like-
come on.
He's army egg noodles and ketchup.
Yeah, egg noodles and ketchup. I'm eating
on,
here. I
Garnier.
got a wife.
As a self-respecting Italian, you cannot call this spaghetti.
What a great episode 2, man.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And very lovely show.
I can't wait to keep watching this. I'm dreading I'm dreading some of the winter episodes we have coming up, like Bastogne, and man, those are fucking hard to get through.
Those are some of my favorites.
They're so good, but it's like, fuck, man, you live that shit with them.
Yeah, you really get the sense of the cold, and yeah, it's brutal. But those are some of my favorite episodes, just because you just see them in such close quarters, and it's some of the worst fighting they experience in the war.
Yeah, man. I'm for the record, I'm out of notes. I loved both of these. I don't know if you
No,
had
me
any
too.
kind of cool historical shit you wanted to talk about.
No, I'm good. I think I covered everything in that one.
Dude, fucking Band of Brothers. I'm excited for the rest of this series. This was a great idea,
Yeah.
Let's keep it rolling. We're gonna come back next week and record another episode on episodes 3 and 4, and our Band of Brothers our band of brothers. I don't even know, what are we even calling this series?
Bob.
Bob the
Bab.
special. Bob the Bob special.
The Bob special.
Bob special. Well, this is One Guy's Seen It. We love you out there. Sumner, you got anything fancy to say? Any last words?
The Curahee thing, which I think is interesting. So
Oh, yeah.
So the saying Curahee is "we stand alone" is the meaning, which I think is a Native American thing, but the Easy Company amended that with "we stand alone together," which was their company motto, which I think is really cool.
Can't quite say I understand it. We stand alone together. Alone together.
We
Alone
band of
together.
brothers.
Band of brothers, we I feel like I can come up with a better expression.
we all the way.
we all the way home. All the way home.
All the way home.
Malarkey.
Boy. Malarkey.
Oh, fucking yeah. We should have done
Prick's
this a
the
long
son of
time
Abraham.
ago. He is a son of... Yeah, man. I just... Yeah, come on, guys. Get it together. You're supposed to be a band of brothers.
I love that scene, too, where the guys are like... He's like, what are they fighting about? He's like, Garnier said Sobel was a Jew. Liebgott got offended because he's a Jew. He's like, fighting over Sobel. That's smart. I love those
That's
guys.
smart. Real smart. Real smart. Right before it crossfades into the next scene. You gotta love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I love you, buddy. Let's do this again next week. We'll be back. This is One Guy's Seen It. And remember...
Every TV show is better with at least one beer.
We didn't even talk about what we were drinking. Just, okay, it's end of the episode. It's a IPA. What do you call it? My hazy one that I drink all the time. Hazy little thing, Sierra Nevada. That's what I've been
Hazy
chugging
little-
on.
I've been drinking a Sapporo again.
Oh, we're so lame. We got to switch it up next week. Also, if
Yeah,
any
I
of
know.
these companies want to sponsor us, that will drastically change what we're drinking every week. So please let us know.
I'm just holding out hope for that Sapporo will sponsor me at some point.
Yes. One Guy's Seen It. Presented by Sapporo.
One guy's seen it, the other guy hasn't. First guy's gonna tell the second guy all about it while they both get drunk.